On Radio Kerry with Sari Houlihan, your farming voice in the kingdom.
Welcome back. Now, with milk price particularly low at the moment, people are trying to see what they can do to cut the cost of production. And one of the options is to install solar PV panels on your farm. To talk to me about how that can help, I'm joined in studio by John Hayes, who's the Managing Director of ProSolar, a solar PV installation company based in Kenmare. John, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much for having me on, Sari.
John, there are huge benefits to having solar panels on your farm, particularly, I think, if you're in the dairy sector.
Yeah, exactly. You know, particularly for farms that consume a lot of electricity, like dairy farms or maybe some other types like pig or chicken farms as well, basically. There's been publicity over large grants people have gotten for solar on farms over the last while. But one thing that's somewhat been lost in that discussion is the actual cost savings that having lower electricity prices brings to a farm if they have solar panels. So, you know, we did a calculation on that based off, you know, real world experience after installations of some of our dairy farmers in Kerry and beyond. And basically the bottom line is that the savings on electricity price that one can make is at least 1 cent per litre, using conservative estimates, on the amount one will be paying for that electricity to produce that litre of milk, basically, which is substantial, especially given where the milk prices are at.
Exactly. Talk me through what, I suppose, the costs are on a dairy farm on average. Say if you'd 100 cows, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so based off some studies that have been done and current electricity rates, it's about €80 per cow per year is around it. So for a 100 cow dairy herd, it's around €8,000 a year.
And in terms then, if you had solar panels, how much would that cover in terms of the cost?
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of this depends on the operations of the farm itself. If you think about a dairy farm, it uses a lot of power in the early morning and probably the late afternoon. And there's also cooling demand there, cooling the milk and this sort of thing. So depending on the farm, it's generally somewhere between, at the low end, 60% drop in electricity prices, and as high as 80% and above. We see, you know, there's a couple of ways that people can save with solar panels. Of course, the solar panels generate during the day. Mostly one would not be consuming that much power during the day on a dairy farm, to be honest. You see a peak in the morning and then the solar starts generating. In the summertime, it's pretty good because the solar will start generating quite early and may coincide with morning milking. But basically, the excess power that is being generated during the day, the power that you're generating that's more than what you're using, can be sold back to the grid for a credit. And then later on in the day, you can use some of the solar power. But what we also preach, and the importance for a dairy farm of batteries in this mix, is that for starters, you can store electricity from the grid at cheaper prices to use it later. So people have night rate. I know in June, July of this year, they're going to start making these additional smart tariff rates available to people, where it'll be like hourly electricity pricing announced the day before. And batteries could give huge benefits to people to store, you know, let's say it's a windy day and there's loads of power and the grid just wants people to use it. The price of electricity will fall massively. And then if everyone gets home in the evening, everybody uses power at the same time and the price of electricity would spike. So batteries can be used to ride that out. But also batteries store some of that excess solar power. When you're generating more than you're consuming, you can put away the power to use later, maybe when you're milking, or if it's connected to the house, later on in the house in the evening. And then once the batteries are full, you still export to the grid and get a credit for that as well.
Okay, so in terms of, say, having 80 to 100 cows, how many solar panels do you need and how much does that cost?
Yeah, exactly. So it's variable, and, you know, the way that these installation scale is interesting, because say if you were to just go and put some solar panels on a shed and do a really simple system, it'd be very cheap capital cost. It would be probably it's all relative, of course, obviously, but maybe 10 to 15,000 euro that way. But the things that provide the true cost savings, like batteries and things like that, have a reasonably high capital cost, relatively speaking. So, you know, you're probably talking, on a dairy farm, it tends to scale from a low-end capital investment of 20,000 to, we've done some that are north of 60,000 that way. But on a beef farm, it can be as low. We've done some that are, 12, 13,000 and not as high, basically.
It's a big outlay. How quickly will you pay that back?
Yeah, so the best way to get repayment on a solar system is having a well-designed system that suits when one consumes electricity. But for a typical dairy farm, it can be anywhere from lower than 2 years to about 4 years.
So very quick.
It's very quick. And the solar panels themselves are warranted for 25 years typically. Look, there'll probably be some investment in maintenance over time and things like this, but it is an absolutely home run investment. It is a really, really solid investment.
The other question I have for you is in relation to the grants, because there are a lot of grants out there for solar panels, and one of the big ones was the TAMS grant, and I think that was up to 60%, which was huge.
Absolutely.
But how is that going at the moment? Are there many farmers applying for it, and are many being accepted? Yeah,
so we have had over the last couple of years many TAMS applicants. We have quite a lot in the system already, but there's been some changes in recent times. On our side, we'd developed an expertise in processing TAMS grants and knowing what people need and getting them through efficiently. But basically, what we've seen in recent times is that the TAMS 3 solar acceptance rate has fallen massively. So there was a 100% acceptance rate for the first 8 tranches of TAMS 3, bringing us up to September 2025. And then pretty much without warning, it shifted to 75% rejection, 25% acceptance on TAMS.
That's a massive drop.
Yeah, it was amazing. I've had a lot of contact with numerous politicians on this over the last number of months, or done everything we can on lobbying. And, it's incredibly illogical. If you think about it, it's basically like there was a snap decision made at one point where everybody always got an offer pretty much before that. And now, regardless of the quality of the application or the requirement, 75% get rejected. And the lack of communication around this is ridiculous, because we know plenty of people who are waiting. They weren't maybe going to get the solar now, but they were going to get it later. And there was no communication that there was a queue, so to speak. If they just put in any application before,
they got it.
You'd have had 12 months to do it, and there's ways to extend a TAMS application. So it seems very unfair that farmers would have gone for this in good faith. There was zero communication, and it's been changed. So one thing that we would preach, and this goes back to what we started talking about at the start there regarding the saving the cost of producing a litre of milk, is that it's important to view getting a solar system not purely in the context of benefiting from a TAMS grant. It brought huge attention to it. It made it a nearly can't ignore investment on a dairy farm because the payback was so quick.
And it reduced your emissions, I think, which is really important.
Precisely, which shouldn't be lost in it, you know. But with a cent a litre of cost saving, that's regardless of all grants. And the other thing is that a farm can claim the non-domestic microgen grant by the SCI, which does tend to represent 25 to 30% of the capital investment. But the other thing to bear in mind is that one can write an investment in solar off against tax as well.
Okay.
So for a sole trader, that's an additional 40% write-off basically, and for a limited business, it's 12.5%. You can get the VAT back. So the effective savings rate you get still not going with TAMS is probably at least 40% anyway, even for a limited company doing solar.
There are other pathways. There are
other ways.
And there is still the same savings.
People are accustomed to thinking in the TAMS tranches and the every 3 months, but in reality, this is just a fluid thing. You put in the application to the SCI and it's automatically accepted, and away you go. It's the thing is, if one was to try to get TAMS today and they were to get accepted, you're still looking at, okay, the next TAMS tranche deadline is on the 6th of March, I believe. From that point, you're talking 6 months anyway until you would get acceptance or that, but you might get rolled into another tranche. We know the rejection rates are there. But if you went for the other route, you could be generating electricity by probably April, and the best months of the year for solar are the summer months. And that's worth €500-600 a month every month it's done.
Yeah. So people can contact you, John, if they're interested and they're wondering, will my sheds hold the panels? How many do I need? Is this investment worth it for me? It's worth contacting you.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, people can get in touch with us. We have our offices on the Sneem Road in Kinmare. We're an offshoot of our family business, RVR Energy Technology, who are based there. And people can give us a call at 064 770 2000. Go to our website at prosolar.ie, basically.
Very good. John, it's been lovely talking to you, and thank you very much for coming into studio to talk to us.
Perfect, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Agritime on Radio Kerry. Brought to you in association with Kerry Dairy Ireland.